we have much more than we need. Yeah, and then two, I think one of the things that like really had me emotional was that he reminded me of my father. He is a very hardworking, humble, quiet man who does what he has to do and puts his family first. And I saw that in Michael. And that was like kind of what ripped me apart, was just seeing like, you know, an example of my father, but in this case, it's just not working out for him.
Yeah.
People of Creston City, people of everywhere around the world, this is David Christopher Pacheco.
Hi, my name is Kimmy.
My name is Arthur Ortiz. Been in Denver since 1973.
Okay, so let's just talk in circles for a little bit.
Just talk in circles, just shoot the breeze a little.
Yeah.
You know, they see beyond what I look like. They see what my actions are and say, hey, that is a good person.
A lot of people say home is where the heart is, but my heart's in many places. It's just I don't know where home is.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Homeless But Human. Here, we're doing things a little bit differently today. So currently, I'm here with Alyson and Jay, two missionaries in Philadelphia.
Heyo.
And we're doing just a little bit of a unique recording here on the patio in Philly. So if you hear some of the hustle and bustle of some traffic in the neighborhood, that's because we're doing our first ever recording outside. So you got the unique special today with the Philly team. That's just how it
Always
is.
like that.
This is how we're rolling. So I just wanted to come here and share some of the stories from the streets with this street team here. So why don't you guys go ahead and share a little bit about who you are, introduce yourself, and then tell a little bit about your street team.
Okay. I am Jay. I am originally from New York, Queens, or Long Island. I don't know which one to rep at this point. I'm still struggling with that. But let's say Queens. Yeah, 20 years old, and I'm a second-year missionary.
Nice.
Yep.
And I'm Alyson. I'm from an hour outside of the city of Philadelphia.
Okay.
It's called Percy. It's a little small town. Go Birds. Yeah. And I'm a first-year missionary.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Great. Well, what street team are you both on?
Convention Center.
Okay. So give me the lay of the land. What's kind of the convention center route like?
Jay knows it better than I do.
Okay. So we are like in the heart of Center City, I would say. It's very noisy, very crowded, people going back and forth. It's like the Manhattan of Philadelphia, let's say.
I think that's fair.
I think that's fair, yeah. Yeah, it's just very noisy, a lot of people. There's always constant movement, cars, or there's a lot of stuff going on around. We do have a few homeless shelters on our route, St. John's Hospice and Philly House.
Okay.
And yeah, there's also like, there's many places like many underpasses or just like people that hang out outside of those shelters. But there are many, many homeless people there just like scattered all about. Not really many tents because you cannot have tents in Philadelphia. So yeah, there's just a lot of people everywhere walking around. Not really in one spot usually, but
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then what's your street team like? Like, tell me a little bit about how many people are on the team, and then kind of, yeah, what the team dynamic is like.
Yeah. So it's me and Jay. And then another first-year woman named Andrea. And then another male, John.
Sick.
It's really good. I think we have a good balance between like just like the dynamic on the team. Like Jay and Andrea are really good at being more like emotionally invested, I think. And then John and I, a lot of the times, I feel like are more rational. Like we're a really good balance in that way, especially in our debriefs. I think we've seen that a lot. But just in the way that we approach the streets too, like we're really flexible with each other and we're really concerned with like, okay, how are we doing on the streets? And that's how we talk at the beginning of all of our street team like walks. We start with just a check-in with ourselves to make sure that like we're in the right mindset and see where we're at and how we can help each other and support each other while we're going about our street walks and encountering people. So it's really good. Yeah.
Amazing. I want to hear more about Center City. Convention Center, right? It's in Center City.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm still getting used to Philly here. So with Convention Center, you have a lot of people, just like all different types of people, I'm imagining, yeah, a lot of hustle bustle, maybe a lot of vendors, a lot of maybe like tourists or people just coming through Philly. What is like the homeless population like, as far as, is it like a transient population, or are you coming across the same people time and time again?
See, that's a thing with convention centers that like we would see people for like a month and then we just never see them again, or we'd see them like half a year later, and like people, it is a very transient route. There's always like people like moving, and sometimes people are just here for like the specific benefits that like some of the shelters might give, and then they leave. Or when they like leave the shelters, they also just leave the whole convention center area and go to different street route areas. So we don't have too many consistent friendships, but right now we are forming a few that we like have found people in the same area, which is, yeah, I would say not the common thing.
Yeah. Unique for that area and for this year too.
I would say so, yeah.
Do you want to like share about any of those friends that you've made that are kind of becoming more of those consistent friendships, or maybe any stories from them?
I'm thinking about like a pretty cool story in particular that we've just met this guy once, which last week.
Please share.
And I'd love to share about that.
Yeah, share it.
Okay, sweet. And Alyson was actually there too for that encounter. It was me and her, which was it was perfect.
Yeah, that was great.
But yeah. All right, so it is Friday. This was last Friday. We just finished our prayer and our check-in. Like, we do our little check-in before the street, see how we're doing, how we're feeling. And we, like, literally just crossed the street in Convention Center. There's, like, this place. It's a family center. I believe it's called Apple Tree Family Center. And they basically take care of families that are on the streets or, like, are moving towards that direction and, like, try to get them in housing or try to give them what they need. And so we, like, were hanging out outside of there. And we saw like 3 or 4 familiar faces, people that we know pretty well, that come to lunch in the park pretty often.
Yeah.
Really cool guys. We just got to hang out with them. Just, yeah, welcomed very, very beautifully by them. Just some of our best friends.
Okay.
And one of them pulled us aside and was like, hey, there's a fella over there who's really struggling and he needs some clothes for his children. I was wondering if I can take you over to him, if you can, like, yeah, maybe help him out or tell him about like lunch in the park, some of these things.
Yeah.
So he walked us over there, and yeah, he introduced us to him. And let's say his name is Michael.
Yeah. It was interesting. We were actually talking. I started talking with Tom, who's a friend that we have here on the streets, and he was concerned with somebody else, like, who was also struggling. So that was really cool to see initially.
Yeah.
So I was like, hey, Jay, we're going to go over to this man, Michael. And he was just outside of this place, like, with his car and with all of his things in his car, and his little son, like, just bouncing around all over the place. And his partner was with him as well. And at first we were talking to him about, you know, he needs some clothes for his kids, and like, oh, okay, so we have this like thing that we do every Wednesday in the park in this location, like, we'd love to help you out. We have donations there. You're welcome to come and to join us. And I think from there the conversation just really like took off. Like, he could tell, okay, this is a place where I am able to express what I'm going through, and they're here to receive me.
Yeah.
And that was amazing to see. And he was just very open, like, right away. But you could tell throughout the conversation that he was trying really hard to, like, keep it cool, like, to not really get overly emotional.
Sure.
And we were both just, like, in awe, I think, of what he was saying, and, like, the struggles that he was going through as a dad on the streets.
Yeah.
And the pain of not being able to provide for his children was, like, tearing him apart inside, and we could feel that, like, everything that he was saying through the conversation. I think we were both at the end when we debriefed, like, it was so real, and you could tell that he was, like, just such a good person, like, really struggling, and how much he loved his kids.
Were his kids there with him too, or not at that moment?
One of them was. The other 3 were in school.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, I that conversation this is like something that I think I remember for the rest of the year and for the rest of my life. We weren't expecting much. We were just like going to tell him about lunch in the park and then go back to the conversation we were having. But we like ended up staying and talking, and like the whole conversation was very intensely emotional because it was so raw.
Yeah.
Like, you saw a father who just, like, he was totally dedicated. Like, it reminded me so much of St. Joseph. Like, I felt like I was looking at a modern day image of St. Joseph.
Wow.
He was putting his life on the line. He was doing everything he could just to be a good father. And he was sharing that his daughter has like multiple autoimmune diseases. Like, they're living out of their car. Like, they're at the Apple Tree Center every day trying to get a place, but because they have 4 children and they're, you know, a mother and a father, it's harder to get a place for all of them. And they're just they're coming in and seeing other people get housing every day, and they're kind of just stuck in the process waiting. And winter's coming. They've been on the streets for 6 weeks at this point. And he was just like, just choking up at a few times. And you can tell that he has to hold it in. Like, he has no other choice than to hold it in because his wife depends on him.
Yeah.
So if he were to let these emotions take over, it would hurt her as well, and it would come out of her as well because they're there.
Yeah.
He can't go to his friends because his friends are in the same spot. They're all like there trying to get housing, and it's nothing new for them, and they got to focus on their family. He can't lose his control for his kids because he wants to be a good father. He can't tell them about these things, and it really broke me when he was like when he was telling me, like, just his children asking him like, Dad, why can't you just go to the bank and get some money? Or like, why don't we have food? And he was just like sharing of even like the pain of having to like steal from stores just to get food for his children. And then just like on top of that, going into the simple necessities and like just gratitude for it, like just telling me, how good it is to put on a fresh pair of socks.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, like I did that today and I'm gonna do it again today. Like I switch out my socks multiple times. And he's like, just having your socks on for a week, the same pairs of socks, or just having a dresser and being able to organize your stuff in them is such a blessing. And I mean most of us, I believe, look over these kind of things, but just hearing his like desire for these things and also the desire to have that for his children really like just threw me off guard. And it was very hard to hear. Like he's got his head on like a good head on his shoulders. Like he knows who he is, what he wants to do. He is not settling for anything less. He's a hardworking man. Like gave us his business card, but he can't even work because if he goes to work, he has to drop his kids off on the street and then go to work while like it's like 4 kids running around in the morning with no food, and it's like a chilly morning, and he just can't do that. So he's like forced to not work either, and it's just like looks like an impossible situation, and yet he's keeping his head straight. Like, I know I will get through this, and I'm going to find a way, and yeah.
I mean, what more understandable, like, case of homelessness than something like that, where you put yourself in the shoes of that person, like a parent, a father or a mother even, and just like, okay, they have these kids that they have to take care of. Taking care of kids is a full-time thing, and when you're not able to, like, even work to, like, help provide for them, like, that is, it's heartbreaking, and it's just like such a cycle.
And that was the biggest thing that I think I could tell too, was like how much of a vicious cycle it was, that just like day after day after day going through the same thing and trying to keep yourself up. But I think it's really interesting what you mentioned about it being like relatable too, because I was sharing this experience with my older sister who has a baby, and the idea of not being able to provide for her daughter just like broke her heart. And I think being able to like share that story and that situation in light of like, okay, this is something that like you can kind of relate to, and like imagine if you were in this situation, how difficult that would be, not being able to provide for your own children, and just the vulnerability of that was heartbreaking. And I think the other thing that really struck me when Michael was talking was how, like, when in those moments when he did come across some sort of like money or something like that, he shared that he had done his laundry, and like his whole family's laundry, and that was like huge. But then there was another family there who like really needed to get their laundry done, and whatever money he had left, like he did their laundry for them. And just like knowing what they were going through like moved him to do that. It's amazing how their hearts are transformed when they're in that situation.
So vulnerable, and like an incredible gift to even give to another family that's in need too, because he was like he had total empathy for them as a father in his own family. Wow. So you guys haven't seen him since, or the family since?
No, we went. So that was Friday, and then we just had our lunch in the park yesterday, which was Wednesday.
Okay.
And we hoped he would have come because we had some clothes set aside for him, but I mean, he has so many things to worry about. I can imagine that slipped through. But hopefully we'll find him again. We know what area he should be in. But we're going to be looking for him.
No kidding. Thank you for sharing that. That is like such a powerful story. One that I just think our listeners can just really understand, and like can probably even put themselves in those shoes too. So Thank you for sharing that. I know that's not the reality of every single person we come across, but like the reality is that those people exist as well. You know, these heartbreaking stories that are very real, very raw.
It was beautiful.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing, both of you, and for sharing that deep story that I know you'll be carrying with you all year, but probably for your whole life. So I think our listeners will also be carrying that with them this week as they're listening. So thank you for sharing. I guess just to kind of like wrap up this mini podcast here, what would be something that you are taking away from this story that you're bringing back to your everyday life, back to community here? Yeah, what is something that you are taking away from it and that it does still rest with you?
There was two things. I think to touch on it again quickly was just like, the gratitude for what I have already. I didn't really want to, I wanted to keep this to myself, but I think it's worth saying. It's like something tiny, but just like I've been carrying it with me. So his son was running around and he had a pair of slides and like that's all he owned. Like the only footwear that he owned. Like his dad was like, he has no shoes. So when we get back to the family shelter, his feet are black by the end of the day because he only has like a pair of slides. And just like for me, just being grateful for the shoes that I have, but like one of my sneakers in particular has like the soles are all like ripped up on the inside, and I was like gonna buy a replacement set of insoles to like have like, be walking on like something comfortable. But recently I've just been like putting them on and thinking about his son and just like I'm gonna be like him right now, and just just like when I wear these shoes I'm gonna think of him and like live this out with him. Just this little tiny thing.
Yeah.
And it is very beautiful because I'm just feeling very grateful for the simple things. We have much more than we need. Yeah. And then two, I think one of the things that like really had me emotional was that he reminded me of my father. He is a very hardworking, humble, quiet man who does what he has to do and puts his family first. And I saw that in Michael. And that was like kind of what ripped me apart, was just seeing like, an example of my father, but in this case it's just not working out for him.
Yeah.
And just being grateful for all that, my father has done for me and my family. Yeah, and just thanking him for that, or just remembering him in that, is one thing that I want to do more often. Yeah.
Thanks, Jay.
Yeah, I think for me, a lot of what stuck out was about like the family dynamic, just the fact that his son was there, and it was like the juxtaposition of his father like so emotional and speaking about how challenging the situation was, and then also watching his little son like run around and him like play with him, and he like hugged me at the end and I almost lost it. Like I think how he doesn't even realize like what he doesn't have. He's just grateful for what he does, like the joy of being a child. I think was something that really stuck out to me. And like you mentioned, Jay, like being more appreciative of how much weight is on the shoulders of like parents to provide for their children, and like when they don't have that, how you feel like there's a role that you have that's not being fulfilled and how difficult that is. So just looking at like the families that I know, even in my own family, like my sister and my brother who have their own children now, like seeing them from a different perspective and being able to like relate to them in that way, I think is something that's going to stick with me for a while.
Wow. Amazing. Thank you both. Thank you for sharing, and for sharing these little nuggets that you're also taking away from this into your everyday life. Yeah, thank you to all the listeners that have tuned in just for this mini podcast. I know I'll be thinking about this story for a while, and I hope that you will be too. And we pray for all of our homeless on the streets, and especially those families who are on the streets as well. So, Alyson, Jay, thank you so much. And to all of our listeners, thanks for tuning in. We'll see you in a couple weeks.
Thank you.
See y'all.
Thank you for joining us on Homeless But Human today. In order to keep producing this content for you all, we invite you to consider joining our known and loved monthly giving community. This is one of the most impactful ways that you can join us on mission. Your monthly gift sends missionaries out to the streets day after day and helps us to continue recording and sharing our podcast. It's our vision that every city not only has soup kitchens and shelters, but communities who are committed to helping the homeless know that they have a home in us. And what is home but a small taste of Christ's infinite love? Visit christinthecity.org and make a monthly gift today to join our known and loved community. And if you enjoyed today's episode, do us a favor and go hit subscribe and leave a review. To get more involved with the mission, visit christinthecity.org.